All right. Welcome. It is just a little bit past 10 a.m. in the morning here in Scotts Valley. It's nice and sunny outside. Hopefully it's sunny for everybody during the day. Okay, so today, Developer Direct, from desktop to multi-device user experience and beyond. Welcome to the third episode. Today is May 3rd, 2013. And with me in the ether, I have Al Manarino.
Hello to all. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you might be right now. And thank you for attending this Developer Direct session.
And I can, just to double check here, I can see my screen on the other machine, and I'm assuming Al can see it, and hopefully that means everybody can see it. And hopefully we won't have any lag today between video and audio. Feel free to use the GoToWebinar interface to ask any questions at any time, and we will get to them throughout the presentation. We don't necessarily have to answer all questions at the end. We can go from presentation to questions and back and forth. So, in the US and Canada, our email addresses and blogs are as follows. So we have Anders, myself, Aolson at Embarcadero.com. We have Al Manarino at Embarcadero.com. And we have David I, who's been in Europe all week. And he may be on a flight back from the UK as we speak. And, of course, we have the global email address, developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com, that some of you have used already. That is to get a hold of the Developer Direct crew worldwide. And that, of course, includes the guys that started this, which is in EMEA, Jason Vokes, Stephen Ball, and Pavel Glavatsky. You can also go ahead and use the following Twitter tag on Twitter and follow us if you want. You can ask questions there. Best, of course, when it's live, you can ask questions here or use the email if you want an email response. So here's the episode lineup. We already did the first two ones, and today is from desktop to multi-device user experience and beyond. So the agenda today will be, of course, we've already done the welcome. We'll do news items. We'll talk in general about desktop to multi-device user experience and beyond. We will do demonstrations, live and recorded. And we'll do a summary and special offers, Q&A, interspersed, of course, and resources and links interspersed throughout as well. All right, so news. Of course, RAD Studio, Delphi, and C++ Builder XE4 have been released. You can look at the press release here, article 43058 on the website. It's also on www.embarcadero.com in the press release section. We put out the EULA, as we usually do, as an article as well. And the bug fix list, the QC bugs that were fixed. Marco Canchu wrote a Delphi language for mobile development white paper that's available here as well. IB Lite, of course, is available with RAD Studio XE4, all editions, and Delphi XE Professional with mobile and above. You've seen in previous editions of Developer Direct and also during the launch webinars, presentations of IB Lite, and of course we'll continue using it in webinars. Here's an interesting press release that we announced as well. Spike selects Delphi XE4. Specifically, they select the application development tools from Embarcadero Technologies to build the only secure browser. So they are going to write a browser that will deal with the security problems that browsers have. Delphi XE4 enables spikes to deliver a unified native user experience across multiple devices and platforms from a single code base. And that is available here. You can post these links actually in the chat. Actually go here type it in the chat. They should be going to the entire audience that way. Another exciting news item is that Robert Miller and his team won a $5,000 prize at CajunFest.org. He posted this at forums.embarcadero.com. This link, actually, right here. If you guys want to see that, if you haven't already. So they won the Entrepreneurial Award for Most Market-Ready Idea. And the Microsoft guys that were present liked it so much that they offered Robert and his team help to get into clinical trials, which is really exciting. And all because XE4 was in the mix and helped us get it done fast and looking great. And they had specifically also a XE4 iOS client to do this. The trial is available. The XE4 trial download. There's two ways. You can get the instant trial at windowsapps.com, RAD Studio. Let's click on that. And go here. Paste it. If you guys want to play with that. And, of course, the regular download trial that you can install and run on your machine. Mac in Cloud. This is a company that JT, John Thomas, blogged about, I think, yesterday.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned this because
this is
news, but you're already ahead of me.
Yeah, this is very cool. This allows you to rent a Mac in the cloud, and the pricing starts at $1 per hour. So you could potentially use the trial and spend a couple bucks and see how you can deploy apps to either macOS 10 or to the iOS simulator on that Mac. I don't believe there's a way to actually hook up a device to it remotely through your local ports. I know somebody was asking that before. I don't believe they have that. Those drivers and all that stuff to come back through your PC or whatever. That would be kind of complicated and probably not according to Apple's guidelines there either. But they are running the Mac in the cloud are real Macs, obviously, and they are sitting in the cloud, so they are accessible. Okay, you've seen this before as well. FireDAC XE4 is available. You can download and use it to get to any data, wherever it might be. Lots of additional events coming up. You can go to the embarcadero.com/news/events page. Okay, so now a little bit in general about desktop to multi-device user experience and beyond. I'm not going to talk too much about these slides because we have lots of demos here, and this is more of a interactive demo-driven thing anyway. So you've probably seen this before. We've got about 1 billion PCs out there. There's about 65 million Macintoshes out there. There's about 1 billion mobile devices and 2 billion web clients. Some of these probably include the mobile clients and, of course, all the other ones as well. So here we have lots of different devices. We have Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and web browsers. Somebody's asking, are the slides available to download? That's something that we haven't thought about, actually. But we could probably do that.
We can easily turn them into PDF files and get them out that way, or just send them out.
Yeah, we could probably do something like that. We'll definitely have the entire webinar will, of course, be available for replay. He says PDF would be nice. Okay.
That's probably easier to do.
Yeah. So anyway,
if you'd like to, but no, we'll save it till afterwards.
Yeah, let's make a note of that. I'll keep that question around here. And somebody was asking, how do I send an iOS demo app to a colleague? I'm assuming that's the generated app bundle. That's a very good question.
Yeah, that's how I interpreted it. Are you talking about the generated .app file to send to a colleague, or?
Normally, what you have to do is, in order to deploy an app, you would need a Mac, and then, of course, you hook up your device to it. It gets code signed and all that kind of stuff. There are multiple ways of doing it. Of course, you can put it in the App Store, but I'm assuming you're asking before that stage. That would be ad hoc deployment, so you would need an ad hoc provisioning profile, and then you have to send your colleague the iOS app bundle and the provisioning profile to the other user, the other friend, and he would have to sideload it in using iTunes that way. Ad hoc.
That's correct. And the getting started documentation, when it talks about the ad hoc deployment, it goes into details on what you just talked about, Anders.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so back to this. So the client diversity will, of course, continue to expand. You've heard David I and JT and everybody talk about all these devices that are coming. Heads-up smart TVs, heads-up displays on in cars and things like that, as well as smart wearable technology like watches and things like that as well. And of course, everybody on these mobile devices requires low latency. Otherwise, it's not a great user experience, right? So from the time that you interact with the application, you have to have a quick response. So how can Delphi and C++ Builder help here? Using multi-device true native on-device rapid prototyping. So here's an overview slide of our RAD Studio containing Delphi and C++ Builder. So we can sit on Windows, where we sit and develop, and we can target with one code base both Windows and Macintosh, as well as in XE4, iOS, and then in the future devices. Like you see an Android phone here and an Android tablet and all of these other devices that I was talking about. And of course, one of the main points with this is that since you have one team and one code base, you're saving a ton of money because you're not using multiple teams, hiring multiple teams, and using multiple different tools and multiple different code bases, which become hard to maintain over time. On-device rapid prototyping, it's actually very cool. You've seen us in a lot of webinars. We typically deploy to the device. We show it in Reflector, and you just keep editing and updating your application, your user interface. You deploy it to the iPad or the iPhone, and you see the immediate effect of your continuous updates to your application. You can, of course, use the simulator on your Mac as well. However, there's a lot of things that don't work in the simulator. For instance, what I'm going to talk about a little bit later, I'm going to talk about notifications and push notifications. Push notifications specifically don't work at all in the simulator, and you will actually get a message that says this isn't going to work in the simulator. So you have to use a real device for certain things, for a lot of different things. So with that, we're going to jump directly into to demos. So Al, you're going to talk about FireMonkey iOS frames. So
yes, I will. So I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes on what I'm going to call FireMonkey iOS frames, and it's this component right here. So in XE4, which I'm running right now, we added frame support for both FireMonkey apps and FireMonkey iOS apps. So this now means that you can isolate your user interface pieces on these frames, and then you can reuse them to build either your FireMonkey apps or your FireMonkey iOS apps. Now, for the VCL developers, this works exactly the same way as VCL frames. So if you're familiar with VCL frames, then what we're doing here would be very familiar to you. So to show how these frames work, I'm sitting here in a file, new FireMonkey, mobile application, Delphi, blank application. I'm going to switch it from an iPhone to an iPad, and I'm going to make it horizontal. So now on this iOS app, I'm going to add a new FireMonkey frame. And I'm going to do that from New Items, under Delphi Projects, Delphi Files, a FireMonkey frame. So there's my FireMonkey frame. So this frame is really a visual container where I can place components inside of it. So if I want to drop a button on this frame, so now I have a button on my frame, and I can resize the frame. So the goal for frames is to provide you a visual container where you can place any component and create this reusable piece of a user interface. And then later, when you're designing your forms, your FireMonkey forms or your iOS forms, you can place these frames inside the form and then use them as panels that contain all of the specific user interface and behavior. So right now, Unit 1 is my FireMonkey iOS form, and my Unit 4 is my frame. So now on the FireMonkey form, I want to add the frame to this. So from the tool palette, I'm going to select frames, and it searches my my project manager for the frames I have out there. So I'm going to select the frame I just created, which is frame 4, and say OK, and it drops it onto my form. So that's all pretty cool. So now that we have it there, I can say I want to take this frame, and let's say I want to put 2 frames on here. One that's going to be on the left side of my device, and one that's going to be on the right side of my device. So for this frame here, I'm going to align it so it fits left, and then I can resize it just to take half of the device. So now I can insert multiple frames on the form. So if I select frames again, it drops the frame on here again. Now for this new frame, I want to align it to the client so it fits the other side of my iPad. So that's cool. So I got 1 frame on my left and 1 frame on my right. So now I have 2 instances of the same frame, and that's okay. So if I run the project now, you'd see what we're seeing here. But for sake of time, I'm gonna now go to the I want to go to this frame. So for example, now if I go to the actual frame we created, I can now add event handlers to the frame or add additional components in here. So if I take the button and I double click on it, I can add my event handler, like a show message. And let's have this show message say XE4 frames. Since it's version XE4, it needs 4 exclamation points. When we get to 5, I'll put 5 exclamation points. So now if I was to run the app, if I was to run this app and I clicked on the button, either button on either side, it would pop up that show message box. So at the end, we'll run it and see it all. And the reason I would get them is I'm going to get the same behavior on both buttons because we have instances of the same class, and that's why we get that behavior. So now if I go back to the frame and I add additional components, like an edit box. So I added this edit box to my frame. Now when I go back to my iOS form, we see that both sides inherit that component. So that's pretty cool. So now this form contains the frames and has the 2 instances of the edit component that belongs to the frame. So that's also very cool. And like again, if I run this app, you would see the behavior right here. Now if you look at the structure pane, I have complete access to all these individual components. So from the frame, so each individual button and edit box, I have complete control from the structure pane. And even if I look into the code, I see here I have access to both of the frames, fully qualified by the instance of the frame. So I can get to it either by code or I can get to it inside of the structure pane. So now if I go to the actual iOS device, And let's say I wanted to delete one of these components. So if I try to take this button and I try to delete it, it's going to pop up this error message that says, I can't do this because I cannot delete an instance of a control introduced in an ancestor. And this is the correct behavior. But what I can do on each individual frame, I can customize the component. So for example, I can move and or rearrange components here. So I can take the button, maybe drop it down here. Now, since this is an iOS application, I inherit all the great style lookups for an iOS application. So for this button, if I go to its style lookup, I can make it any one of these great iOS attributes, like let's change its color to red, make it a delete button. So that's all cool. So that's great. So we started with a FireMonkey application, dragged some frames onto an iOS application, and now we inherit all of these great iOS attributes and style sheets from the iOS application. So now I can change the base frame. So if I go back to the base frame and I make changes here, like if I just take the button and then move it down instead and maybe make it larger. Now when I go back to the iOS app, you see that change happens on the frame that we did not make any customizations to, but on the frame that we did make some changes and customizations, that remains the same. That does not get changed. So this is kind of like visual inheritance, where I can customize the children of my frame. So now that we've did this, just to show you how this runs, I think I have my simulator set up just to make sure it's connecting. I want to test the connection. It's working fine. So let me run and deploy this. So if you've seen it before, we build it here on Windows. We use Platform Assistant Server on the Mac to talk to Xcode, and that allows us to sign and package up the application, and then it either gets deployed to an iOS simulator or it's going to get deployed to an iOS device. So right now it's in iPhone mode. It should still pop up, but I really want to switch it to my iPad mode. So once it deploys it over here, I'll change its hardware to be an iPad, and we'll make it horizontal, and we'll deploy it that way. So I really want this hardware device to be an iPad, and I want to vertically change it, rotate it, so that's the form I want. I have an iPad on this side. Let me
I think what happened was you shut down the simulator in the middle of deployment.
Yeah, I agree. So now I have an iPad here, iPad there. That'll make it better. Project, and let's run it. So now it's going to from an iPad over to an iPad, and life will be better.
So there's two questions here actually while we're waiting for that to fire up. If the app is customized for iOS, does one need to customize it again for Windows? Well, that's a good question. It depends. If you want it to look differently, I mean, obviously, you can't take any desktop applications and put them on a mobile form factor without having a different user interface. You would have maybe a tab control and slide in and slide off screen kind of user interfaces and things like that. The other question is one code base. You have to redesign forms depending on target device so they all fit, and that's correct as well. So some of the stuff in the one code base theme is something that we will be working on in the future as well with layout managers and things like that. So that you can target multiple devices with potentially the same UI. For now, assuming that you isolate your user interface from your business logic and everything like that, then you can reuse all your business logic because it's all Delphi. You can reuse all those units if you create them correctly, and then simply design specific UIs if you need them for different devices. It's entirely possible today, at least with simple applications, to have an iPad and iPhone application that simply just scales using a T-scaled layout or something like that. Or at runtime, you can add in frames and things like that, like Al is doing here as well on the iPad, versus on the iPhone, you could have the frames on different tab controls, on different tab pages. So go ahead, Al, you have it running now.
So yeah, that was fine. Yeah, that was a hiccup. I was going between iPad and iPhone, and I stopped it in the middle of it, but it deploys fine. So what you see here, it gets deployed fine. The customize button still hits the button on click event handler, and the other frame on the other side still behaves correctly. So it's just a quick look at frames, and once again, they're a very powerful feature to help you design your user interfaces. And like we said before, one is like on the actual form itself. If we view it as text, we see it's a FireMonkey iOS app, right? It's got Designer and it's got Designer Mobile here. But if we look at the actual frame itself, it's a non-iOS application, just a regular FireMonkey application. So I can take a FireMonkey file and I can reuse it on a FireMonkey iOS application. So that's very cool. All right, at this point, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you, Anders.
Yep, that's cool. I will grab it soon. There's a question here. Are there features or capability differences between Delphi and C++ for iOS development? And that's a good question. We don't have C++ support for iOS currently. We will in the future. That is on our roadmap and very important to us, of course. And our goal is that Delphi and C++ Builder will be able to do the same things for iOS and any other platform that we target. They work the same for Windows and Mac today. Can I create FireMonkey custom components the same way I created VCL components? Yes. Essentially, it's a little bit different. There are FireMonkey styles, so if you're creating stylable controls, then there's something new to think about. However, there are Code Rage presentations by folks like Ray Konopka and Bruno Ferenc of TMS on how to create FireMonkey controls as well. Is it better to remove the trial version before installing the purchased version? I would definitely recommend uninstalling prior editions of the same tool, prior SKUs of the same tool. So the trial version will probably not coexist with the bought version. A Pro edition will not coexist with an Enterprise edition of the same version of the tool. So it's probably a very good idea to completely uninstall the trial before you install the purchase version. Yes.
Yeah, that's my experience. The trial is an Architect edition. So if you're purchasing Architect, then if you use the Architect key, it seems to work okay. But if you're going to downgrade it to Enterprise or Pro on top of the Architect, I've seen some issues there. So as Anders suggests, it's probably much better to uninstall the trial and reinstall the purchase version.
So now we're going to have Serena DuPont. She is going to present list view.
In RAD Studio XE4, we've introduced a new component, the T-list-view component. Now, the list view component is designed for long data-bound scrollable lists, and a good example of its use can be found by having a look at the FireMonkey mobile application templates, and you can have a look at either the phone master detail application template or the tablet master detail application template. Now, here I have the phone master detail application template. You can see I'm using a tab control. I have the tab position set to TP none, and what it allows me to do is work with each tab item as a different view. So I have my main tab item, and then I have my detail tab item. On my tab item 1, I also have my list view component. And let's also have a look at our Live Bindings Designer. And let me just switch back to tab item 1. And here in the Live Bindings Designer, you can see I'm using the prototype bind source component, which I've selected some sample data for, and I have two bindable properties. I have an item.text and item.bitmap. Item.text I've bound into my contact name, and item.bitmap I've bound into the contact bitmap. Now, if we're having a look at the list view component, you will find an item appearance property. And here you can see that our default item appearance that we've set is image list item. And that gives me, again, the item.text and the item.bitmap properties. You can also find if we're expanding the item view, you can see that there is an accessory, and you can choose from 3 different styles of accessories. Or you could also toggle the visibility off to hide the accessory altogether. And you would see that the accessory would be grayed out, as in this case, to give you a visual indicator of what's enabled and what's not enabled. Now let's have a look at our image property. Here you can also set the height and width of your image as well. You can also set the text font, text color, etc. So you could, for example, change this to a teal color if you wanted to, or any other color, different font size, etc. Now for each default item appearance, there's also an edit mode that you can toggle. And you can choose from different edit modes. For example, you could select the image list item delete, or you could select the image list item show check. And then this would give you a check mode where the user could check off the different items in the list that they want to delete. And you could place a speed button onto your toolbar, change the text to edit, and then of course on-click, set an on-click event to enable the edit mode. Now you will also see that with this template we are also using an actionless component, and we set an on-item click event for T-list view. And on item click we are calling the change tab action, and that gives us the tab slide transition as we go from our first tab to our second tab. And we also have the sync property of the list view component bound into our data source, and that allows us to keep the records in sync. Now let's deploy this to the simulator. Here you see the application running on the simulator. You can see the matching record, and you can see the slide transition as we go between the master tab and the detail tab. Now let's create a new form. And in this example, we're going to create a custom list view item appearance. Now I'm going to drop a toolbar onto my form, and the list view component, and also the prototype bind source. The list view component I'm going to align to the client, and I'm going to right-click my prototype bind source component to add some fields of sample data. Hold down the Shift key to multi-select, and then I'm going to have a look at my item appearance property. Expand this, and I'm going to set the item appearance to custom, and I'm going to want to use an image and a detail view and detail text item, and also I want to set an accessory, and I want to display the text and detail in a stacked manner. So I'm going to go to View Live Bindings Designer. You can see I have an item detail, color name, item text. I'm going to set to bitmap name, and an item.bitmap I'm going to bind to the bitmap, sample bitmap. Now I'm going to select the item, and I'm going to increase the height to, let's say, 60. I'm going to select the image and change the height to 40 by 40. And I'm also going to change the vertical text align position to leading for the detail and also for the text item. And then I'm going to change the X position to move my item over. And I'm going to do the same for the detail item. Detail item, I'm also going to change the Y position. And I'm just going to click Fill List, and I'm going to tweak it some more. Select the list again, Fill List. And this allows you to create a custom view. You could also add a text button, for example, if you wanted to. You can easily change the color of the item or the detail text item. You could change the font, etc. So those are some basics on how to use the list view component in Delphi XE4.
So let's start with something that I blogged about the other day, which was this one, handling iOS application events. So we provide a functionality framework service to go ahead and handle application events. On the iPhone and iOS in general, there are multiple different events that can happen at any time. For instance, when you hit the home button, your app will be sent to the background, and there's an event for that. And one of the things that I have wanted to do was, just like a game that my kids are playing, when they close the application essentially or send it to the background, hit the home button and do something else, all of a sudden the character will just yell through the speakers that, don't abandon me, come back, I want to play more, that kind of thing. Or they'll schedule something to happen later. So a reminder for the child to come back and play, a day later, a week later, or whatever. So the way you can do that is as follows. We open my project. I'm just going to do a reopen. Easier. Here. So I've made a form here, and you can see it's a form with a label on it, and it does almost nothing, except it has an on-form create handler. Here, what I'm doing is I query the platform to see if it supports what we call an IFMX application event service. The specific interface we want to have is, we want it returned over here, right? So, go back here. If it does support the application event service, we hook this event up. We say a set application event handler, and we pass in app event. Okay, what's app event? App event is our event here. Much like an on-idle handler or any other event handler, it is a function that returns a Boolean, and we get past the application event itself and a context. Okay? So in my event handler, what I'm doing here is I check if the app event is entered background. In that case, I'm going to go ahead and send a notification to myself to remind myself that I should play some other time. Application event is a type that's declared in here in fmx.platform, so it's platform independent. There's finished launching, there's became active, there's will become inactive, there's entered background, will become foreground, will terminate, low memory warning, time change, open URL. And there's probably more on other devices in the future. So this will, we will continue adding to this as needed. Okay, so send notification. If you saw the launch webinar and a couple of other webinars and Developer Direct, you probably saw me present this as well. So when we send a notification, we basically go ahead and query, do we have support for the notification center interface? In that case, we go ahead and grab it. We make sure that we actually got a hold of it. We create a notification. We give it a name, my local notification. We say hello world or hello from the Delphi XE for iOS app that you used 5 seconds ago. Very simple little reminder. We set the fire date to be now plus 5 seconds. And then we finally scheduled a notification. So let's go ahead and run this. We'll go ahead and run it on the device. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to juggle my devices. Hook in my iPad. My iPad you can see over here. So you can see this is live 1046. This is my iPad. I can move stuff around and you can see everything that's happening on my live iPad. Okay, so let's run this. Go ahead and compile and run and link and deploy and all that. Good stuff. And there it launches. And all it says, hit the home button and wait 5 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to hit the home button. And we sit and wait a little bit, and several days have gone by, and why aren't you playing? So there's an example of sending yourself a notification even though you're done. Shut something down.
Very cool.
So with that, everybody's asking, what about push notifications? Okay, so push notifications is something that we did not wrap in the box. But we have a wonderful MVP in Venezuela, right here. Luis Felipe Gonzalez, he created a push notification server in Delphi, XE4. It's right here. I bring it up here. There's the push notification server. You notice there's two components essentially on this application. There's a TCP client and there's an SSL handler to be able to support push notifications, Apple push notifications. So what we have here is a VCL push notification server. And here is the client. So this client is even more simpler. This one has absolutely no events whatsoever. There's three labels in a form, and there's no code in this application, on this form, right here.
Wow.
So, like I said, push notification was not something that we wrapped in XE4, but so Luis, basically what Luis Felipe created was a VCL push notification server. He then created an Xcode client, and he got the proof of concept working. Then I helped him up a little bit with what you need to wrap in order to get push notification functionality to work on the iOS side from Delphi. So what we ended up with was a slightly modified platform iOS.pass implementation. It's in my project directory, and it's added to my project here. This is a couple, you'll see the Spanish comments here from Luis Felipe, of course. These are kind of the notifications that you can support, a badge, a sound, or an alert, or all of the above. So we basically tell what support we have. And then, let me go up to the beginning here and see if I can find the remote stuff. So here we have a couple of different things that we had. So this is the local notification that we already saw a demo of, right? You notice here that we have also added remote notification with device token and things like that. So this is some support that we bolted on. The most important part is actually down here. When we create the appropriate Cocoa classes, we get an application, we create the T application, and we bolt on methods and handlers at runtime. So here we create a Delphi app delegate. Here we have the UI application delegate. And specifically for remote, some of the stuff that's not there is these three. So we did receive a remote notification right here. We did register for remote notifications with a device token, and we did fail to register for remote notifications with error. Then, of course, we need to have handlers for this as well. So Luis Felipe created this Apple Push Remote Unit, which implements these methods right here, and basically shows a message, did receive a remote notification, and shows the payload on the screen. If we fail to register for remote notifications, we display the error. Typical error could be that the server wasn't available, that you hadn't provisioned your device, that the provisioning profile that you tried to deploy with the app didn't have support for push notifications and things like that. Did register for remote notification with device token is what comes back on a successful notification registration. So this Apple Push Remote Unit is actually also used in this modified framework implementation. We could have used it from our project or whatever. The important thing is that the implementation gets bolted on here. Okay, and his code is available, by the way. I actually blogged about it as well. Push notifications for iOS. So here's his blog, and here's the specific article. He provided a video. It's in Spanish, and here he has the code. So the code is available. So I downloaded his code and modified it for my purposes for this webinar. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to run this on my iPad and show you what happens. And we'll talk more about the server shortly. I want to show you what actually happens. Okay, so there it is. You launch this, and it immediately comes back and says, did register for remote notifications with device token. And there's my device token for this particular app. Push notifications are app-specific, and they are they're a mix of device and app-specific. So you couldn't actually take this device token and start sending me messages. I'm sorry about that. But oh, I keep clicking on the screen when I'm supposed to click on my iPad. Okay, so that's my application running here. So now, if I go to the server, and this, like I said, this is a VCL server, and I go ahead and connect. I have hard-coded iPhone and iPad with a push notification provisioning profile. You have to pre-select what devices you're going to broadcast to for development purposes. So I just told it to use my iPad and my iPhone. So here, if I send now myself a message on the iPad, I'm going to click on the send button and quickly switch over, and there is my remote notification. Hello World from Delphi XE4 APN Apple Push Notification Server. Click away. Some people probably don't believe me, so go ahead and say hello world to the iPad. And now it says hello world. Okay, what's this look like if I shut down my app? Let's go ahead and try it. There's my hello world. I can click on it, launch my application, and there it is. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like as far as what is the server doing here. So the server, when I send something, is going to connect. The TCP client's going to connect. Then depending on the radio group, I'm picking a device token here. This is my iPhone and this is my iPad. I simply copied them from that display when I ran it on both. You can see some lingering Spanish in here, which is cool. In my or in Luis Felipe's code, rather. I go ahead and send myself a message by basically writing to this TCP client. There's a few different things in here that requires a little bit of explanation. In order to do push notifications, you have to create, like I said, a provisioning profile. You also have to create SSL certificates and a public-private key pair. And if we go to the Apple page for this for a second, here they basically talk about, well, what is it and how do you do it? And the provisioning and deployment, or provisioning and development, sorry, is the important part here. So basically, you have to go ahead and create an app ID in iTunes Connect. You have to tell it that you are going to support push notifications for this particular application. You cannot use a wildcard app in this case, if you're familiar with the terminology. Then you go ahead and in the keychain access, you go ahead and generate a certificate signing request. This is on the Mac side, so here's my keychain access if you haven't seen that before. You can see that I have my iPhone developer certificate, I have my iPhone distribution certificate in here, I have my Mac developer certificate, and I have my Apple Development iOS push services for this specific application or this app bundle. So after a while, you go ahead and basically get your provisioning profile, you get your SSL certificates and all this kind of stuff. And this is all password protected so that you can push it between different machines, email it to yourself or whatever. So these SSL certificates are used by this SSL handler. In the SSL options here. Okay, so here is my certificate file and my key file. They happen to be in the same file in this case because you select both the certificate and the private key, and they get wrapped up in the same file. Like I said, you have to provide it with a password. So in this case, we have a get password handler for the SSL handler. I just pass back the password, which is Delphi XE4 rocks in this case. Then I have a on status and an on for the SSL handler, and I have one for the client, where I simply just add that to the memo. And there's some more code here for creating the JSON packet that actually needs to go to the Apple push notification server. If you noticed here, oops, it wasn't running, so let me run it again. If I run the server here and hit connect, you'll notice that it connects to gateway.sandbox.push.apple.com. So all push notifications are sent from this server to the Apple infrastructure and is then distributed to the different devices. And Apple will, of course, make sure that you have the correct authentication, all that kind of stuff to do this. All right, so let's continue. I added also, on the topic of reusing code, I added a version of this server that is a FireMonkey application. So here's my FireMonkey version. Looks very much the same. In this case, I simply hard-coded. I'm going to send it to my iPad instead of putting doing the radio buttons and everything. So if I run this, here's my. I'm going to add FMX here. I'm going to send it. Switch over to my iPad. Oh, I need to show it on the screen. And there it is. Notice it says Windows 7 on there as well. I actually added some code on there. On the sender, I get the TOS version name. And you can imagine where I'm going with this. So from Windows, I send it, and I get Windows 7 in here. Now, I'm going to switch target platform and run it on the Mac. And it's going to bring up my push notification server on my Mac. And now when I send it, it says Mac OS 10. And there's one more, just for fun. So some folks may still be a little skeptical. Oh, what about, let's see, what about putting this on a server somewhere? So let's go ahead and go to my static IP in the EC2 cloud. I'll log in with remote desktop. And of course, if you trace route this AP, you will see that it is in the Amazon cloud. And there it is. Ignore this data snap server. It's been sitting there for months, serving my needs. Here we have an APN server. Go ahead and launch it. All right. So here we have, here we go. I'm going to push it over here. I'm going to go back to my iPad. Ah, there we go. Notice Amazon EC2, Delphi XC4 APN server. So there you have it.
Very cool.
There you have it. Oh, I wanted to show this on. I'll do it slightly different. I wanted to show this on the iPad. Let's see, on the iPhone as well. Okay, so here's my. Let's use the Mac one. I'm going to go into Xcode. I have an iPhone 4. It doesn't support AirPlay the way that Reflector needs it. So what I'm going to do here is plug in my iPhone. It'll figure it out that it's connected. Okay. And we're going to go to screenshots. So let's take a screenshot of my iPhone. So this is just a way to show you that it's live here, okay? So it's 11:05 on the 3rd of May, and it's Friday. So what do I want to do here? Yes, I want to go ahead and say... Oh, this one was hard-coded to iPad. I'm sorry about that. Let's go to the VCL one, which had my iPhone on it. To iPhone 4 from Delphi XC4. I go ahead and send that. Quickly run over here to Xcode and take a new screenshot right there. And you can see that I got my iPhone 4 notification from Apple. One other thing I wanted to show you. Notice I'm not on Wi-Fi specifically. I'm on 3G. So my push notification, of course, worked over the telco provider, in this case, AT&T. And there you go. Lewis says, wow. So, yeah, I've been waiting a while to be able to present that. That's pretty cool, I think. You can imagine my my reaction when it took me about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours yesterday, and of course, you know, we had meetings and stuff like that, but it took me about 2 or 3 hours to get provision and get the SSL certificates and get everything set up. But when it finally worked the first time, I just couldn't believe it. I was stunned sitting at my screen, and it was pretty cool. So there you go. What do you think, Al?
That was awesome. So I just saw this for my first time, so that was absolutely awesome. So thank you for doing that. And I'm going to ask it, this code, you are going to make it available to us, the mere mortals, so we can reuse it?
Yeah, of course. Like I mentioned, Luis Felipe is one of our MVPs. He already published his code in his blog. The only thing I did basically was add a FireMonkey client to it, and I... what else did I do? I added my my certificate PEM file, the protected email file, or whatever the PEM stands for, and also my device IDs, my device tokens. Do you get the SSL certificate from the Apple Developer Portal? Yes, that's one thing that I forgot to mention. Yes, you have, of course, you have to be an Apple developer, $99 a year. And we actually go to the Apple Developer Portal to get those SSL certificates and the provisioning profiles for the application that is going to be push notification enabled. And also, you have to put that into the entitlements, etc. Are there examples of message pushes? I did that for the last half hour, I think. pushing messages using push notifications. So if you want to watch the replay or take the code for a spin, we can do that as well. How would cross-platform push notifications work for future Android development? That's a very good question. That is something that, of course, with Android support, we will be taking a look at. I guarantee you that they do push notifications differently because they can't use Apple's push notification infrastructure, of course. Am I communicating live with my iPad over the internet? Yes, absolutely. I was using Reflector to show it on the screen, and my iPad is sitting next to me, not plugged in with any cables or anything. Is there a way to interrogate the iPhone to return the physical size of the screen so you can take into account different iPhone models? Yes, absolutely. You actually get your width and height of your main form is going to represent the width and height of the device that you're running on. So that's very, very simple. Anything, Al, you want to add anything?
I am good on my side, so this was most excellent. Cool.
And yeah, if you haven't tried XE4, go ahead and take a look at the trial. If you want to play with the Mac simulator, you can pay $1 for an hour for Mac and Cloud, as I mentioned earlier, and try it as well. So let's see here. Examples of pushing to the application called messages on the iOS machine. Yeah, that's what I did early on as well. If the app is, if you open the application, it will get the payload passed to it, and it was actually doing a show message showing the payload on the screen. The rest of the time, I was using the notification center, so that's entirely possible as well. The push notification server and iOS device are one-to-one, and each need a unique SSL certificate. It's actually the push notification server that needs the SSL certificate and the SSL private key to be able to communicate with the Apple push notification infrastructure. Your iOS device will have, for development in this case, a provisioning profile installed on it that has push notification enabled for this particular application. If you create an application that will go to the App Store or otherwise, you will need to create a production push notification provisioning profile that you need to sign your application with, and this is handled like any other provisioning profile in Delphi as well. We can totally do that. You just provide your if you remember, I had my certification, my provisioning profile showing in the keychain there for a second that had the iOS push notification text in it. So once your app gets approved, then it automatically has the entitlement for push notification, and it is signed with the push notification provisioning profile. And of course, you have to deploy your push notification server somewhere where it is running 24/7 by 365 by whatever number of years, because your users are going to expect this server to be running all the time so that they can get push notifications. And that's, of course, part of the app review process when they try the push notifications and make sure that you're doing it right, you're not abusing the system or whatever. All right, so with that, we are at the end of today's Developer Direct. Reminder, here's a Twitter tag, hashtag EMBTDD. Join the conversation. Send us email, developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com. Next week, May 10, we will have What's True Native and Why Does True Native Matter? Here's the replay of the XE4 launch webinars, by the way. Resources, Embarcadero.com, products, DocWiki, our community, of course, EDN, Code Rage 7 replays are right here. Here you can watch all the replays for those styling sessions that we were talking about earlier. Embarcadero on YouTube. That you can just click on the icons on our web pages, and of course the blogs. And again, the EMEA crew, Stephen Ball, Pavel Glavatsky, and ourselves, Al Manarino, David I, and myself. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in a week, minus an hour. Thank you, Al.
All right. Thank you, Anders, also, and thank you all for attending, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
All right. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thanks.
All right. Goodbye to all.